Today, Nally Elementary would like to recognize all of our February Leaders of the Month. We are so proud of these students for their outstanding leadership in the classroom, on the playground, in the lunchroom, and also always displaying the 7 habits at Nally School. Today, I will recognize each student in each grade level and tell you a little something about them.
Starting off in kindergarten with Mrs. Craig's class, we have Declan Drake. Mrs. Craig said, "I am so proud of Declan. He's been working so hard to get to school and get his work done. Declan is a fast learner. I look forward to seeing him continue to grow. Way to go, Declan." In Mrs. Parton's class, we have Cameron Falanga. Mrs. Parton says Cameron lights up our room. She is always positive and is excited about learning. She brings a smile to all of our faces. Also in Mrs. Parton's room is Lincoln Gardner. Lincoln is full of happiness and enjoys learning. He is helpful and generally cares for everyone, and we are blessed to have him in our room.
In Mrs. Rankin's class, we have Chloe Varos. Chloe has been making great gains with her working with others and opening up with friendships. Her personality is beginning to shine. Keep sharing your love and kindness to others. Also in Mrs. Rankin's class, we have Elijah Dennison. Eli has been beginning to adjust to our kindergarten classroom. His effort and concentration is improving. Keep putting your best foot forward. Moving on to Mrs. Zukowski's room, we have Ashlyn Kane. Ashlyn has gained so much confidence in kindergarten this year. She can be seen participating in class and always putting forth excellent effort. Also, in Mrs. Zukowski's class, we have Jet Evans. Jet makes our classroom a better place. He can be heard telling friends that he's missed them when they are absent. Jet also proactively completes his work and raises his hand when he has something to say.
Moving on to first grade, in Mrs. Beard's class, we have James Whiteman. James has been working extra hard, focusing on doing his best work. He has been taking his time with writing and puts forth a great effort. I am so proud of you, James. Also, we have Hannah Smith, and Mrs. Beard says, "I am so proud of Hannah for how focused she has been on her learning. She always participates in class and has been working hard to make sure her work is her best before turning it in. Keep it up, Hannah." In Mrs. Bowser's class, we have James Hill. James exhibits all 7 habits. Mrs. Bowser said James decides to start writing get well cards for each of his classmates when they were sick. He said he wanted to make his friends feel better and let them know that he cared. Way to go, James. Also in Mrs. Bowser's class, we have Abby Mothersbaugh. Abby also demonstrates all 7 habits. Abby listens carefully to instructions and follows directions. She is the first student to turn in at-home projects, and she goes above and beyond the teacher's expectations. She inspires her classmates to do the same. In Mrs. Fiesler's class, we have Rocco Slutz. Rocco synergizes. He knows how to be a team player and class partner, whether it's recess games or class activities. Keep It Up, Rocco. We also have Madeline Dvorak. Madeline seeks first to understand. She is an inquisitive kid who is always using her curiosity to drive her questions and learning. Keep it up, Madeline. In Mrs. Rector's room, we have Olivia Varner, who demonstrates all 7 habits. Olivia has become a leader in our first grade classroom. She comes to school ready to learn, works hard, and is kind to her classmates. You are a superstar, Olivia. Also in Mrs. Rector's room, we have Elijah Ross. Eli begins with the end in mind. He was struggling with math this year, but with the help of his family, he made a plan. Say for how to improve his performance. I am proud to say with much grit, extra practice, and a positive attitude, Eli's math score has improved. Way to go. Way to have a growth mindset, Eli. Moving on to 2nd grade in Mrs. Grandin's class, we have Kensley Conan, who seeks first to understand. Kensley has a superpower of seeing the good in everyone. She seeks first to understand when others are not being their best. Also in Mrs. Grandin's room, we have Jacob Kemple. Jacob is proactive, begins with the end in mind, and puts first things first. And Mrs. Grandin says that Jacob is such a proactive learner. He comes in each morning with a can-do attitude. He gets to work and strives to meet goals. He sets to learn and grow. Way to go, Jacob. Moving on to Mrs. Slimack's room, we have Julie Fisher. Julie puts first things first. Julie has really buckled down and focused on organizing her work to complete the most important tasks first. Keep up the hard work, Julie. Also in Mrs. Slimack's room, we have Reese Flynn. Reese puts first things first, begins with the end in mind, and thinks win-win. Reese is a quiet leader in room 116. She was new to Nolly this year and has quickly mastered the 7 habits. We are so lucky to have Reese at our school. In Mrs. Truax's room, we have Gia Goodwin. Gia is proactive. Gia does a fantastic job at completing her makeup work when she is absent. She has a positive attitude about learning and school. Keep it up, Gia. Also in Miss Truax's room, we have CJ Leib. CJ is proactive, puts first things first, and sharpens the saw. CJ has a great balance between play and work. He gets to work when it's go time, while still making time to sharpen his saw when needed. Keep it up, CJ. In Mrs. Van Dorsten's class, we have Amelia Nicholas. Amelia demonstrates all 7 habits. Amelia is a wonderful example of a student who exhibits all of the traits. When she is a hard worker, friendly, helpful, responsible, and fun-loving. Keep up the hard work, Amelia. We also have Amelia Parker. Amelia puts first things first. Amelia has
been consistently
coming to school and working hard to do her best by putting first things first. Keep it up, Amelia, because I am proud of you.
Moving on to third grade. In Mrs. Braley's class, we have Emma Wallace. Emma thinks win-win and seeks first to understand. Emma has shown improvement since the beginning of the year. She has been working hard to listen to directions before completing a task. She has been slowing down to find text evidence instead of rushing her work. Keep up the good work, Emma. We also have Cassius Kuzma, who is proactive. Cassius is a proactive learner. He often makes connections to topics and has an enthusiastic attitude when learning. Keep this attitude, Cassius, so you can accomplish all your goals in life. In Mrs. Esterly's class, we have Brody Knox, who thinks win-win. Brody has adopted the think win-win mindset. He always has suggestions to make sure everyone has a turn and listens when there is a disagreement. Great job, Brody. Also in Mrs. Esterly's class, we have Sloane Steiner, who begins with the end in mind. Sloane always makes sure she understands the assignment before moving on. She has a plan and sticks with it all day. Great job, Sloane. In Mrs. Sassner's class, we have Wyatt Schreiner, who begins with the end in mind. Wyatt is a fantastic role model for our class. He comes to school ready to go, motivated to learn, and always follows directions. We appreciate you, Wyatt. We also have Layla Howd, who begins with the end in mind and puts first things first.
Layla
is the first person in our room every day. She always stops to read the board and then can help everyone after her that comes in. Thank you for being prepared every day. In Mr. Straub's class, we have Isaac Chapman, who puts first things first. Isaac is such a great leader using the 7 habits. He is very reliable and getting done what needs to be done so he can move on or sharpen the saw. Also in Mr. Straub's class, we have Hayden Cooper, who synergizes. Hayden is very good at working with others. He doesn't rush ahead or get too far behind. His groups are usually all the same place on their work. Mrs. Melville would like to recognize Caleb Hall for synergizing. Caleb synergized well with his classmates to make a snowman jar for his senior citizen pen pal. Thanks for working hard, Caleb. Moving on to our 4th graders, we are going to start with Mrs. Gardner and Mrs. Hansel's class. They would like to recognize Lillian Kusmitz, who puts first things first. Lillian is working hard to be the best 4th grader she can. She is very responsible and has a positive attitude. She works hard each day. Keep being a leader, Lily. In Mrs. Madsen's class, we have Emmeline Finch, who is proactive. Emmeline is a good leader in 4th grade. She comes to school prepared and ready to learn. Keep it up, Emma. Mrs. Oakes would like to recognize Dominic McGraw, who thinks win-win. Dominic likes doing nice things for others. He volunteered to help his friend with a cast to do a lot of his writing. Thank you for helping your friend succeed, Dominic. Also in Mrs. Oakes' class, we have Callie Hostler, who is proactive. Callie takes it upon herself to do so many jobs around our classroom. She is a hard-working and responsible, and I appreciate her leadership. Mrs. Toth would like to recognize Jackson Russ for putting first things first. Jackson is always ready for his classes because he has learned to put first things first. He even puts first graders first during their lunch, helping them before he goes to recess. What a guy. Thanks, Jackson. Also in Mrs. Stokes' class, we have Isabel Buck, who is proactive. Isabel is a proactive fourth grader. She is always quietly thinking ahead and staying ahead of the game. Isabel takes her mail job seriously, again making sure her classmates have all of the papers they need. Thank you, Isabel. Mrs. Millville would like to recognize Avon Chris for beginning with the end in mind. Avon demonstrates beginning with the end in mind each day when she comes for tutoring. This positive attitude towards working hard to become a better reader is so impressive. Mrs. Millville is happy. She is here at Nolly School.
Congratulations to all of the Nolly Leaders of the Month. The entire staff here at Nolly is so proud of you. Please keep up the great work and your outstanding leadership. Way to go!